This meeting is being recorded by the
Great. Okay. Rakaya, would you like to get us rolling tonight?
Of course. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our monthly June event, I'm Not Ashamed. My name is Rukaya Fayyad, and I am the newest intern at Pieces of Me. For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome to Pieces of Me Foundation. Pieces of Me was created in 2019 by Daniel Hodges and Christy Rogers. Their sole mission is to eliminate the stigma associated with physical differences, disability, and chronic illness. Pieces of Me is dedicated to empowering and helping people from all over by giving them the right resources and connections they need to be successful. Now I want to take the opportunity to introduce our moderator, Daniel Hodges. Thank you. And thank you for coming to our event.
Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. You know, we originally started this organization to erase the stigma and bring people together. And tonight's topic falls completely in line with that mission, because the topic of when, where, and how to disclose our disabilities or chronic illnesses and the approach that we take when doing so intersects with stigma and with misconceptions on a multitude of levels. So I'm excited to have this conversation with our couple of panelists tonight. I'm excited to also take questions and comments from the audience and have a more robust conversation, because the goal of this event, like all the other ones that we have here at Pieces of Me Foundation, is to get people thinking about these topics in different ways, or at least revisiting the assumptions that we all have. We all come in here with preconceived notions from society, from our own lives, and many times those provide building blocks. We want to make sure that we are constantly moving forward and learning and refining how we view this world in order to keep creating progress. So with that in mind, as Rakaya mentioned earlier, my name is Daniel Hodges. I am president and co-founder of Pieces of Me Foundation. I identify as having a connective tissue disorder, anxiety, ADHD, and I am also blind since birth. I mention these because these are characteristics and identities that I have brought into my personhood over time, and I've experienced different levels of comfort with these varying identities as I have progressed individually and as I have built up my own network and my own support system. And I wanted to lay that foundation for our panelists and for everyone else here to maybe set a framework for how we can discuss these kind of topics. So with that in mind, Jim, since you are the first of our panelists here, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself and maybe just say a few things about who you are and what brings you here tonight.
Okay, well, I am Jim Troutwine, and I'm a law student. I met Daniel Hodges in law school. I am currently on medical leave for some of my own physical challenges. My physical challenge originally started with a motor vehicle accident, and that has caused me some chronic pain, including headaches and arthritis, things of that sort. But I also developed at the same time Meniere's disease. So that's given me kind of a new appreciation for educational barriers. My particular situation with Meniere's means that fluid builds up in the inner ear, and what happens is that can cause imbalance, that causes profound hearing loss, and I've had some underlying hearing difficulties anyway, so that kind of made it very difficult for me to participate in the classroom discussions. We've had some accommodations that have tried, but not fully resolved those issues. I'm trying to get things under control now. Just recently got hearing aids, so that should actually help me tremendously. Hopefully finish up school and become an attorney like our esteemed leader here, Daniel.
Great, thank you. And has Kat Howard joined us yet? Okay, I'm guessing that is a no, so we will introduce her when she comes on board. So, Jim, talk to me a little, as much as you're comfortable, about the process of navigating life after the car accident and figuring out what life was going to look like and how you were going to talk about this new reality with people.
Okay. Tell me if I'm perhaps off on a tangent that you're not wanting, but you know, I'll let you interject as you feel you need. But after my car accident, I had a couple of what they call RFA surgeries. That's radio frequency ablation. And that's basically where they end up burning the nerves to prevent chronic pain. I was originally doing the conservative treatment, medical treatment, which included medical examination, chiropractic treatment. Those things failed to resolve the symptoms, and in fact, they grew worse. Ultimately, that led me to the RFA surgeries. And before I got to that point, I was on OxyContin. Now, of course, people have heard recent horror stories about OxyContin. And while I did not have an addiction to it, thank God, had I known then what I know now, I probably never would have taken it. Also, what it did for me is it was another barrier to law school to me at the time. I was trying to attend Tulane Law School, was staying with family down in that area, and that ultimately did not work out. I returned to my home in Baltimore and restarted at University of Baltimore. With the physical demands of such a heavy academic program such as law school, I was not able to complete it at this point. Again, owing to those physical challenges, things like I wouldn't be able to hold my head up for very long, I wouldn't be able to read for the hours that it would take. I wouldn't be able to also hear the classroom instruction and the student questions, as I had mentioned earlier, with the overlying Meniere's. So I had a lot of challenges kind of hitting me just as I was trying to get into law school. And to top it all off, I'm seriously old, 52 years old now. It was, I think, 48, 47 when I started. And obviously that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm learning really what it's like to be in the disability community. I'm learning what it's like to face those academic barriers. I will describe a little bit more about the challenges on that end of things. Karen Schultz, I know she is here. She has been a wonderful, wonderful asset to University of Baltimore. She was the one to help me with getting a transmitter. Now, I would wear an earpiece, and the professor would wear a microphone, and that microphone would amplify the professor ideally, so that I would be able to hear better. The problem that I ran into is that some of the professors wouldn't wear the microphone. In some cases, especially in some of the female instructors, they didn't have a pocket to clip it on. They didn't have anything to clip their the microphone on, then they would put it on their podium, and I'd be able to hear them nice and fine when they're at the podium. And of course, they walked around the room. Well, also having the earpiece on, I wasn't able to hear the student questions because they weren't all mic'd up. And so that caused me a little bit of difficulty. I took to recording the sessions with permission, and some instructors were reluctant to allow that. But I got permission to do that. And so I would record and try to hear things after the fact. That is not a full substitute because, of course, I can't participate in real time to some of the questions. And I still did my best to participate. So I look to see if I can help in any way, those people that come behind me that face similar problems, or see if I can help anyway as people that are facing entirely different problems, ones that I'll need to educate myself on and to provide some kind of assistance. And for that, I truly do respect Mr. Hodges for his dedication to exactly that. I also want to, again, personally thank Ms. Schultz for her kind assistance, patience, and her dedication to service is just unparalleled.
Well, here to that. We have that in common, and we've been blessed to have Karen as not only a friend but also in Pieces of Me land, having her as one of the founding board members of this organization through thick and thin. When I was contemplating going to law school back in 2017, when I was first considering whether to take the LSAT, I had a similar series of questions. I wasn't on any heavy duty pain meds, but I was in the middle of having several surgeries. I had had surgeries on both femurs by that point. I knew I needed both surgeries on both feet still yet to come, and actually ended up doing each of those surgeries while I was in law school. And there was always that fear of, can someone do this profession? Can someone survive law school with chronic pain? And or are we going to find in a very inopportune time that we have reached our limits and be between a rock and a hard place? So tell me more, if you would, about how you approached that question of chronic pain and some of the other symptoms you were talking about, and whether you felt and how you got to a point where you felt comfortable enough to go for it.
I would say that my experience has been a little different than yours. You actually made it through. So kudos to you, Daniel, for all of your strength and for your resourcefulness. I'm still trying to finish and still trying to make it through. I'm not even sure that I can. I'd like to have a more hopeful message perhaps, but sometimes the answer is that it does not happen. I do have the benefit of working in this field for pretty much my entire profession, which, as a paralegal, as a legal secretary. So I know a lot of the basics, and that helps me not be afraid of the subject material itself or even the practice of law itself. My fears are whether or not I'm starting to get too old to do this and, going through too much to complete it. But I am so close, I can taste it. So I am going to do my level best to get back into law school this year, this fall, and to finish up this year and to take the bar exam, which of course terrifies me like it would anybody that has a working brain. I'd be more interested, quite frankly, Daniel, in hearing about your experiences and how you made it through that. again, I can see that it can be done. I'm not quite sure I can see how it can be done in my case, but you know, I know that it can, and I just have to find that way.
You know,
Yeah.
I found myself when I was, and we may have actually been in the same class together when we were doing administrative law, I think, in
That's correct.
fall of 2019. And I had a moment where I actually sat down and wrote each of our professors an email because I had had an inflammatory attack in my right hand and wrist that was making it extremely difficult to use my white cane and almost impossible to type. And when you can't type in law school and you're not used to dictating things and acclimated to those software, it was a trip. And so I actually sat down and wrote an email to all of our professors and said, look, this is what's going on. I'm seeking treatment, but it doesn't look good. You know, turned out there was a cyst that was pushing on one of my nerves in my wrist. And it was a learning experience because all of them knew about my blindness, but very few of them, if any, knew about my chronic pain and chronic fatigue. And so having to write about that and say, oh, by the way, I'm trying to make sure I meet all of our standards, but please, you know, work with me to make sure that, you know, I don't completely fall behind, or just, you know, let's keep those lines of communications open. This is what's happening. And let's, you know, let me know if this becomes a problem from your vantage point. And the responses from the professors were overwhelmingly positive, but it was difficult to be able to not only admit that vulnerability, but also to say, on one hand, I'm asking for some level of understanding in a very competitive and strict environment, and on the other, say, look, I'm not asking you for you to lower your standards. I'm just asking for you to let me know if you see a problem so that we can address it before anything gets sideways.
Daniel,
But yes, yes,
we have a hand raised from Deborah Vick.
awesome. Go ahead.
Thanks, Daniel. So I realized afterwards my hand raised, you probably couldn't see it. So thank you for letting him know. And I have to say, so I'm listening to your story, and I think we've talked before about this. I did all but 5 units of a law degree in Southern California. And the very first day of law school, I was told disabled people don't graduate, so don't bother starting. And so I had a very different experience than what you're describing from my law school experience. And yet, and I don't know if it's gender related, I don't know if it was because of my physical disabilities, but I did want to comment about the pain issues, because that is something I had to deal with when I started law school. When I started, it was known I needed a pain pump, but because I hadn't gone through all the FDA requirements, I had to go through all the step process. For those that don't know, it means I had to go through a whole bunch of other medication first, meaning I was either vomiting from pain or vomiting from the medication throughout much of my law school career. So when you mentioned pain, I just had to raise my hand because that was not something that's easily describable to teachers, right? And for anybody who's been to law school, trying to study evidence on pain medication and either vomiting from pain or anything like that is, yeah, it's just not recommend. I don't recommend it. Not fun. But one of the reasons why I wanted to join today, right, is changing this narrative of what is acceptable behavior. And how do we express that to the professors? Like, I wasn't looking for an excuse. I was looking for working with me, right? Working as my team members, as a partnership, so that I could be the best version of myself while in school. And I do know my first semester, week before finals, I ended up in severe septic shock and ICU, and apparently with only a few hours of not being here today because I was forced pretty much to feel I had to perform no matter what. And that's not what I want others to experience. So I'd love to know, how do we change this narrative of, one, recognize us as human beings, not as an it or a that, which I was referred to on many occasions. And two, creating acceptance of accommodations in law school arena. You know, I couldn't get accommodations for LSAT. Now I know it's different today than it was when I took the LSAT a while ago, but getting accommodations in the classroom. You know, you were talking about voice recognition. I use voice recognition, right? I have to use note takers. I did get permission to record audio. It wasn't always working the best of my ability. And I still had to dictate all of my exams, right? So one, how do we change this narrative? How do we change this level of acceptance while still not changing the standards? I mean, I get there are certain standards we need to be able to work because we're working in a field where people's lives are in our hands. So I completely understand that, but also the humanity of who we are and what we're trying to accomplish, that has to matter too. So I just wanted to throw those questions out there for you guys.
I'd like to speak to a few things that Deborah just mentioned, and just I want to say the fact that, you know, Deborah obviously went through so much. Daniel, you did as well. Karen has probably seen it all, helping people through all of this. And I've known others through pieces of me and in my experience that have faced quite a lot trying to go through law school. And the last thing that Deborah said was so critically important, and that is, how do we focus on the humanity of it and enable people to fully participate in this profession? Because I ask you to take a look at all of those people I've just named and think of the awful prospect of not having any of those people in the law. You guys are an absolute inspiration, and you are a valuable asset to the profession. It is important on the law school end of things, and since I'm a hammer, I always see nails, but it's important to the legal profession that we have human beings. That's what it's all supposed to be about. And that we have people with varied experiences, and that we find a way to design a system that can discover those assets out there, develop those assets in a way that, while yes, we can't lower our standards, but we can raise our cooperation. And even though our legal system largely is adversarial, which just means one side argues one, the other side argues against them, that's fine and dandy. But the whole purpose is still supposed to be people. And there's a way that we can be much more collaborative. And a collaborative justice is something only recently being developed, which I'm actually all there for. I think that's kind of the way to go in most of these cases, because a lot of times the problems between people are not so much their diametrically opposed legal positions, but rather their inability to communicate, to bridge a gap between what differences are there, how to identify those, how to work through them, how to come up with creative solutions together, so that they spend less of their resources fighting and more of their resources accomplishing their goals. So a lot of what Deborah said there really, really spoke to me. So I'm just amazed again at the people that I meet here. That's kind of my thoughts on that.
Thank you so much for that. And Deborah, thank you for those comments and those questions. I think they added a lot of richness to this conversation. And I would add to it this, you know, Jim, you mentioned us reimagining what justice can look like. And I think this actually dovetails with that. We're reimagining, you know, whether our legal system has to always be adversarial. And I think in that same vein, we can reimagine what a competent and contributing attorney looks like, what skills they bring to the table, how they bring those skills to the table, and what a successful outcome in law school is. And so I think this really, you know, helps us again go back to square one and say, okay, we have this base set of assumptions. Are they still serving us? And if they're not serving us, get rid of them. And I want to say one more thing before I bring in, it looks like Katrina has joined us. I want to say one more thing though. If we find ourselves so afraid to fail that we stop trying, to me, that is when the real failure occurs, not only individually, but more collectively. You know, Jim, Deborah, neither one of you have graduated law school yet, but I would hope that in the process, you gained some valuable things. I would hope that in the process, you were able to change some perspectives and leave your mark. And regardless of those facts, kudos to you, both of you, for going for it and trying and not letting negative expectations stop you from even leaving the starting line.
Thank you very much, Daniel. That's very kind of you to say.
Absolutely. And we don't, I think we as a community need to end this assumption that it's only a success if we meet some external threshold that is not always well defined and certainly not always customized for our circumstances. I think we need to have a much broader idea of what success looks like. So with that in mind, I want to introduce our other panelist, Katrina Howard, who is kind enough to join us tonight after dealing with Chicago traffic, it sounded like, and has another really amazing story. So Kat, I'm going to let you take it away and tell us a little about you and about the work you do.
Hey, Daniel. Yep, that Chicago traffic does wear me out. Yep, I'm worn out. However, this is important. So thank you for the invitation to be here. I was listening to your panel members and to your point, you know, you can't quit based on some external threshold. I mean, I kind of took that, that was my takeaway as you ended. I'm a Navy veteran, served in the Navy back in 89 to 93. I joined the Navy during peacetime. And of course, Desert Storm, Desert Shield kicked off. When my enlistment was up, my dream was to, you know, go to school as planned, let the government pay for it. But during that experience of active duty serving with a few, I was a bunch of firsts, right? I was the first group of women engineers to go to the ship. First group of women to go upon a ship that was retrofitted for women. So that was a change. And then, of course, you know, all that comes with it. You know, you had sexual harassment, trauma, racial discrimination, sexism, all the isms that you can think of. My parents did an awesome job in sheltering me and my brother, making sure we didn't see that in life, but I saw it when I was until like 5 years ago. And so yeah, I was constantly beating myself up, you know, failing. I attempted school so many times. I never finished school the first time. They didn't have online school. To utilize your benefits, you had to go to state colleges, and state colleges nor universities had online schools at that time. So, I mean, I was, you know, always beating myself up because I didn't stick to the plan. And I mean, it was a rough time. And when I did decide to go back to school, and online school was available full time, you know, I pretty much had to pay out of pocket because the the VA or GI Bill didn't support that at that time. So to your point, you're not knowing, not knowing you have this disability. I didn't even know anxiety was a disability until being diagnosed with it. And it is a lot of shortcomings. It's always, you're always falling short. I utilized the veteran benefits of doing therapy to manage it, drug-free. As you know, the government likes you to be on drugs. And not the drugs we want to be on, but the drugs they want you to be on. I know you laugh at that, Dan. And so just trying to do this task of being drug-free, managing anxiety, all the side effects, right? Body aches, severe skin conditions, migraines, all of that came from anxiety and undiagnosed. And man, did not beat myself up like I should have checked for that first. Like maybe that was the reason why I didn't complete school 20 years ago. I did complete it, like in some serious debt. It was personal goals. But I did it because I just refused to give up on myself, whatever that looked like. So I did it. So with that experience, Dan and I met through nonprofit work. So I do have a nonprofit where I work with women veterans to get them connected with their benefits, ensuring that they utilize their benefits that they're entitled to. It's one thing that we're entitled to. Sadly, when while you're active duty, just about in all branches, they tell you not to go to the VA because you may want to come back to the military and you don't want that on your record, is what I'm hearing from a lot of veterans, which is not true. And if you get out the military, 9 times out of 10, you're not going back. So a lot of people don't utilize their benefits. And sadly, in today's society, women are just, they're just not included in the information, with information on how to use their benefits. So I do that voluntarily, no salary. I just think I should give back to my sister veterans and my brothers that are not utilizing any benefits, and make them use their healthcare benefits. And
Trina, what's the name of your organization?
It's called SAFE. It's acronym for Saving Another Female Enlistee. And
Thank
so what we do is right now we're doing a 2.0, but we basically hold the veteran's hand and say, hey, come and register, get registered, find a primary care doctor. And just, even if you don't use it, I can tell you, if you have to quit your job for any kind of reason, it's kind of good to know that you get health care. And it is empowering. So we want to empower all of us, each one of us in life. And this is a tool that veterans can use. So that's where I am today. So thank you for Daniel for inviting me to be on this panel. And a pleasure meeting everyone.
And thank you so much for being here. And Kat, if I recall correctly, this is discussing your anxiety publicly is pretty new. Is that correct?
Right. You think because you live in a big city, and like I said, my parents did an awesome job in sheltering me. I didn't know racism was a thing. Even you heard of it, but I didn't know it was a thing. And so you didn't complain. You was taught not to complain and not to ask too many questions. People will, think bad, have a bad impression of you if you ask questions. And so, I followed my directions from my parents, and I didn't. And so it was a shock. And until I went to therapy, I found out that it was pretty common that people have anxiety and it's debilitating. And in most times it's undiagnosed and untreated.
And I want to commend you for, you know, sharing that, being again so vulnerable tonight and sharing that experience, the full breadth of it. Because I think, you know, going back to a question that was asked earlier by Deborah, how do we start changing some of these things? We have to bring some of these things out of the closet, and it takes people, you know, Jim and Kat, such as yourselves, who are willing to stand up and say, look, this is the uncomfortable truth of what I live with, and I want to, again, be not ashamed of it, but to really start putting a face to some of these things that we often hear but don't really understand. Kat, while the spotlight is still on you for a moment, you shared with me in one of our first conversations last year about the experience of the Veterans Clinic that you encountered, I believe, in Chicago. And we talk a little about healthcare in these webinars here and there because it's such a stark reality of what so many of us deal with. And you just blew me away with the story. So I would invite you to share, what did the Women's Veterans Clinic look like when you first encountered it?
Right, you got a good memory. Yeah, so being a young woman, I think I was around 23, 24 years old. Wanted to utilize was having some health challenges. Went to the VA, which at that time looked like a pool hall. It was like one step away from a pool table and cigarettes. I mean, it was so it's very densely populated with a lot of veterans, male veterans, probably Vietnam vets. So it was an older crowd, and it was cat cowing. And then I finally made it to this dark corridor that says Women's Clinic. And I go there, and there's 2 doors and 2 chairs, and a new nurse practitioner who looked like she just finished school. And she said, "Oh, welcome to the VA." And I was like, "Oh my God, I got to get a job with Blue Cross Blue Shield." Because that was my experience. And she had to maybe be a couple years older than me, maybe. And it was totally embarrassing. I didn't know what to say. I didn't trust it, because nurse practitioners was not common at that time. And I was totally disappointed. And I thought I was like, didn't they know that women were getting out the military at some point? Like, they never even thought about having an area dedicated to women or at all. And they did not. So that was very traumatizing. And it was funny to the fact that I had a couple of uncles who were Vietnam vets that actually recognized me. and they too said, yeah, they gave you all a crappy a hospital. And that was my uncle saying that the women's clinic sucked. So so that was that experience.
And Kat, when you mentioned earlier the SAFE, your nonprofit, and I imagine, maybe I'm wrong for assuming this, but I imagine that your anxiety journey, unrecognized for so long and then now finally recognized, probably played some role in you creating this organization. So assuming that's true and that I'm not sticking my foot in my mouth, could you tell us a little bit more about and how you have kind of married those 2 realities, so to speak?
Yeah, about 15 years ago, one of my shipmates, we decided to have a Navy reunion, and took us about 2 years, but we gathered a group of women, I mean, men and women, but when we planned the reunion, we separated ourselves from men and women because we just thought it was good that after we caught up and had the meet and greet that someone had the idea that we need to talk separately and comfortably. So in that experience, I found a lot of women had a lot of sexual trauma, a lot of anxiety. They were sharing their stories, and it was crazy. It was unbelievable. And women were getting 100% disability because of probably a combination of all of those things. And so, one of the ladies from the group said, "Hey, somebody need to start a business and talk about this, and we need to do our job of making the VA acknowledge us and give us better health care." So, a couple years later, we caught up again. We had another reunion. I said, "Hey, I'll start it. Someone just tell me what to do." Of course, I did that. And not putting your foot in your mouth, then that experience sitting with those women just told me that this is so much bigger than me. And we all believe leaving no veteran behind, but it was me and a couple of our friends with all of our misdiagnosis put the business together. And I pretty much stayed the path. But if I reached out to them, they all support me. They all support us. So and realizing and open and sharing to one another was one thing, but asking for people to help you and sharing your experience is another thing. I'm not comfortable with that yet, and it does hold me back. But I still think we're worth it. Us women veterans are worth it. And I just keep pushing through the best I can.
It's a process, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And then once you hear stories and you can see yourself in their stories, it takes you back, and sometimes it causes setbacks. So you almost have to be mindful of that as well.
And so, for both of you having what we would call invisible disabilities, there's no sign that you wear around your neck saying, "I have Meniere's," or a chronic pain or anxiety. How do you process through those decisions of what you want to share and when and how you want to share it? How you decide to bring up these things in conversation?
Katrina, maybe you can start first.
Okay. I do a lot of vetting, and having anxiety, you have a natural ability. That's when the fight or flight kicks in at all times. And it's to your benefit sometimes because you have to ask all the right questions. A few years ago, I didn't ask the questions because I was worried about offending someone, but I do properly vet, just ask like key questions to make sure I can trust them with myself, my story, trust them with my organization, my sister and brother veterans. So I've learned to do vetting, and sadly, there's a lot of predators out there that take advantage of, humanity's shortcomings, if that's what you want to call it. I don't call it that no more, but I used to. And you just have to be mindful and just kind of learn how to vet people to protect yourself and those around you.
I'd like to actually speak to that point about vetting. I, have, in addition to the chronic pain and the Meniere's, I also have anxiety and lifelong depression. So I certainly understand how that little toxic self-brew works and is self-limiting. But then there's also the stigma. I'm being, an older person, have grown up with the stigma being the norm, and that's only just now beginning to kind of fade, thanks to efforts like this group's and SAFE. So I'm learning how to vet. And just recently, as a matter of fact, a day and a half ago, I think it was, I spoke to my boss, who is a classmate actually from UB. And I told him, I said, I need to let you know, because I'm sure you see my emotional state is a little bit different. I tend to get a bit more combative. I tend to be a bit more brusque, perhaps, than I intend to be when I'm going through an episode of depression or anxiety or other things going on. So I told him, I said, well, I'm actually not taking my medications right now. You might notice a difference. I said, but I'm going to do my best to be mindful and not let that impact my professional functioning as a law clerk. I think I've done a pretty reasonable job of that, but every once in a while, I'll hear back from somebody, hey, so-and-so wasn't terribly nice, or I thought they were rude. And what I think is matter of fact doesn't translate so well. And that's because I've got that additional, filter, I guess, that does impact the communication. So I just recently tried to kind of vet my boss to say, hey, look, hey, this is what's going on. And I felt the immediate need to say, and I did say, I'm not crazy. Just because I'm not on my meds doesn't mean I'm crazy. And I almost felt embarrassed for A, having to feel like I needed to say that, and B, for having said it, because I thought that was not in keeping with removing the stigma. In fact, I think I almost introduced it. My boss, I think, took it well, but you never know how people take things because they don't usually respond. They don't say anything directly. So that's now my latest anxiety trip. So I'm encouraged to hear from Katrina about how she vets, and I think basically I'm doing some of the similar things she might suggest, which is try it a little bit at a time and kind of see the response you get. The one thing I will say, not really in my defense, but at least to fill out the picture, is that I think my boss understands that with whatever I've got going on, and sometimes even because of what I've got going on, I can become a more effective advocate in certain areas and with certain problems that maybe somebody that didn't even have any of these challenges would never be able to face. So I look back and I think of all the things I've been through, and that kind of gives me the strength to push through and to find the solutions that benefit, of course, not only me, but also the clients we're trying to serve. And so again, I look to you guys all for inspiration as well.
Daniel, Cam, Deborah in the chat mentioned that she also does talk about her experiences and took a while to start doing that as a way to hopefully inspire others, and is willing to share her story. And
That would be
has to
great.
jump off to go something else afterwards.
Thank you. So this is Deborah again. Obviously, never shy on words. This year has been a big journey for me in self-empowerment. I've been a speaker for many decades. We're going to go with that for a while. However, yeah, we're just going to go with a big broad term like that. However, this probably the past 7 or 8 years has been extremely challenging for me with the latest disorder of myasthenia gravis, on top of my other rare conditions, which has caused me to slur and have a lot of cognitive challenges in finding the words, connecting what's in my mind's eye and the verbiage together. And for those, since we've talked about law school, a lot of people here know We do that all the time in law school. So losing that ability significantly impeded my self-confidence. To take it a step back further, I already lacked a self-positive image, partially because I came of age with crutches, with undiagnosed diseases. I wasn't diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos until I was just under 25 at Johns Hopkins. And so I often was made to feel lesser than, and definitely not beautiful, coming as just a woman growing up on crutches. And now I have crutches, wheelchair, braces, full leg braces, back brace, neck brace, and for those who can see, I wear oxygen as well, and a service dog, who is, by the way, always the center of attention. But learning to get confident in speaking again with my slurred speech or my lack of verbiage was so challenging. So for me, social audio became a key component in that confidence builder. I practically live on, oh, is it me? Sorry, reading the message of audio, hopefully, sorry, that's mine. My apologies. I spent a lot of time on Clubhouse to gain confidence in speaking again. I also this year was part of a collaborative book to share my story of finding my path of and redefining said path as to what my life is supposed to be. You know, and I've changed that verbiage from the life I thought I was supposed to have. Sorry, I changed the verbiage to life that I was supposed to have to the life I thought I was supposed to have. To embrace that I am still on a path to make a difference. I'm still on a path of change and acceptance and of inclusion, but it's taken me a long time. And then this past year, for anyone who's read my bios, and some of it I know we know from LinkedIn, I embraced another completely journey that I never expected to do. I'm part of the Miss Wheelchair competition. I never thought I would be doing that, but it is a combination of pageantry and advocacy, which I'm actually gearing up for because that competition's in a few weeks. But it's again, learning to embrace who I am, where I'm at as a mom, as a parent, as a leader, as a scout leader, as an advocate, and just coming into my own and understanding every one of us is on our own path. Every one of us faces an obstacle. Sometimes it's visual, sometimes it's invisible, sometimes it's both. As some of our cases, I know Jim and I were talking, we both have some of these invisible and visible challenges. But realizing to give myself grace and to give those around me grace and to just try to be the best version of myself all the time, the best that I can be at that moment. And sometimes that might mean not functioning where I want to be at, but it's okay. Tomorrow's another day. So with that, I want to say thank you.
Absolutely. So true. And for those of you who don't know, I, also have Ehlers-Danlos, and the reality of getting diagnosed with a disease that we are ironically enough born with, but yet get diagnosed in sometimes middle of adulthood is actually not especially rare. I wanted to tap back into the process of vetting people. I think we struck a very important note with that, because from the surface, one would think that if we have somebody in our circle, friend, family, coworker, and they care about us and they have the best of intentions, that should be enough. And I think we all know from experience it's not necessarily true. So I want to ask for y'all to maybe dive a little bit deeper into how you vet people and how you decide what kind of dynamic is going to work in those particular relationships to make sure that everyone is getting their needs met and that the risk of harm is reduced.
I'll interject. One thing I've learned to do was testing the waters. Like, just ask a scenario, ask a question like, do you like 32-ounce bottles of water? And if this person just says, oh, water bottles are stupid, and they're contaminating the earth, and if they have and it's all justified, right? All good reasons. So I know that I can never, ever in my entire life speak to that person about 32 ounce bottles of water like Dan is drinking right now. And so if you don't like the response, and if you challenge it, and you see that there's no way around it, then you just, from that point on, you know what to share and what not to share. And until you feel comfortable with, maybe they're having a bad day. So maybe you can bring that up at a later time, but just throwing proposed questions at similar scenarios about yourself or your beliefs, I think it's my way of vetting.
And if I can add to that, I think excellent suggestion. I kind of pre-vet, if you will. I always try to do my best to introduce value that I might have that I bring to the table before I'll try to vet someone, because I want them to be able to see something other than the disability topics, if you want to call them that, other than the challenges that I might be facing. I want them to see the opportunity that I might be able to bring to the table. Even during the time that I was in law school, and even the time that I've been on medical leave, that I've been able to accomplish quite a bit professionally. Not anything that necessarily they're going to sing my praises and hand me an award, but individually on certain cases where things were pretty difficult problems to resolve, and I've managed to get them to successes, successful outcomes. I one time had given a sales seminar, and certainly I'm no salesman, but there was one point that I made that it was pretty impactful. And I said to the salesmen that were gathered before me, I said, raise your hand if you're surprised by your successes. About half of them raised their hands and half of them didn't. And I said, well, the half that didn't raise your hands, you're not trying hard enough, because that's really what makes a lot of the success that we have, is to try beyond what we think we can achieve. So that's my pre-vet, is to try to achieve beyond what maybe the expectation might be, so that I can then have maybe the room. I'm almost thinking of it like a bank account. I'm depositing something in of value so that I can then have the room to withdraw a little bit on the, so here's what I'm facing. Here's how I'm asking for others to cooperate with me, all for the benefit of whatever, either company, organization, or just interpersonal relationships. So I'll add my pre-vetting to the vetting there.
And for both of you, how do you, or have you had that conversation where you effectively have to say, hey, friend, family member, I know you care about me, but I also know that my circumstances are likely to overwhelm you, or they're not going to resonate with what you are familiar with. And so this is a part of my life that I'm going to keep separate from our relationship for both of our benefits. How do you have that kind of conversation?
That's pretty tough. Like, for my friends whom I believe are friends, I feel comfortable in saying this is not a good day to talk about ABC. I'm having a bad day, or I'm having a bad week, or I'm having a bad month. And they're not offended. Most of the time they're not. We're friends. So your friends challenge you and they call you out on your mess. But then you have a situation where you have to talk about it, and if you haven't established a plan or a strategy to create boundaries for yourself or someone you're talking to, it's going to be tough, and there's no there's no formula for which is what's the best process at that time or that day. So for me, if to your point, Daniel, if I can't handle it, my friends and family, I can tell them, hey, this is not a good time to talk about that. But I haven't mastered on the stranger or even a fellow veteran. Sometimes I can't handle a story and I take it all in, and that I'm having a worse day, because I can't tell them no. So I'm still working on that too, Daniel.
And I'd like to speak to, having that kind of a conversation with a family member or friend. As I mentioned earlier, I was originally attending Tulane Law School, and that ultimately didn't work out because, again, a lot of the pressure that they put on you in law school, and with this, at that time, undiagnosed Meniere's, I was having a lot of difficulties. And they tell you in orientation, hey, your family's going to have to kind of go through this with you, that they're going to be affected by how you're going to be kind of closed off. You're going to be, nose in the books all the time, avoiding social interactions, etc. And that's going to take a toll on them. And unfortunately for me in Louisiana, that didn't work out. That process wasn't quite strong enough to accomplish that. So I decided to come back to Baltimore, and hopefully we'll finish up here. But I actually am planning on having exactly that conversation with my Aunt Pam, who was the one that was so kind to let me live with her for the brief period that I did. It was about a year. And although it didn't work out, there were definitely those strains that I now need to have that conversation. So I'm kind of coming up on that and trying to communicate to her that even though I may not have been a very great house guest, I'm sure I wasn't, there were some challenges there, but I tried. I really did try my best. And there were things that I was genuinely angry with her about. And I'm sure there were things she was genuinely angry with me about. But that I want to communicate to her that the relationship to me is more important than that kind of difficulty we faced for, unfortunately, an extended period of time, one that neither one of us is really prepared for facing. So yeah, I'm going to be having exactly that kind of conversation, and perhaps in a later panel, I can let you know how it goes. But if I'm no longer allowed back in the state of Louisiana, it did not go well. If, however, Louisiana doesn't somehow pass a law about me, then I'll consider that a success, because I know in my heart I still love my aunt dearly, and nothing ever changed, even during the midst of the worst of it.
I really appreciate you sharing that. And it's something I think so many of us struggle with. Figuring out how to have those conversations is honestly possibly even as hard as the conditions themselves. Michael, I saw your comment and Karen's response. I echo Karen's sentiments regarding, we're sorry for your loss, and if you would like to share a few of your thoughts, we would be happy to have you come off of mute if you would like.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I just, if anything, I just wanted to say how wonderful this is to have this meeting. I've been dealing with depression and anxiety for most of my adult life, and for a lot of time I didn't realize what I had. I think that law school, for myself, I don't know if you ever saw the note, but I am an attorney. I went to law school in Northwest Ohio, and it's hard enough, as you know, to get through law school without having that kind of challenge, but having that and not being able to receive proper treatment for it because the school didn't have very good resources in that regard, made things even harder. And then once you get out, if you're lucky enough to have good grades, the job market can be a challenge, especially when I graduated in 2008. The job market took a hit, and so it was a challenge. But then if you weren't able to perform well, it's even worse, and that's what I had to deal with. But that was 15 years ago, and now, but still, like it's kind of like a weight that you carry around, and even if you're lucky enough to find employment, like the depression doesn't go away, and so having to maneuver around those conversations that you're talking about with employers, supervisors, or even just coworkers can be a challenge as well, or even knowing even have that conversation at all can be a challenge.
Well, thank you for sharing all that, and for being here tonight. And so I want to move into the solutions portion of our conversation, so to speak. And I guess the first question I have is, for those who are maybe earlier on in the process of figuring out how to have these conversations, even within ourselves, let alone with other people. And this is a process. None of us, at least as far as I'm aware, none of us has this figured out completely. What words of wisdom could any of you offer to people who are in this process trying to figure out who they can still be and what they can still become and how to get there?
I'll jump in first, Dan. I would say to myself and to you all, first of all, you're brilliant, you're smart, you're beautiful, you're where you're supposed to be, and if you're not there yet, you're on the right path. And I say that my degree is in project management. I started off as an engineering degree, and it was stressful, right? So I decided to go after a degree that would help me manage myself, which would be, in this case, project management. And my master's is in public administration, in organizational management. So with that, I learned that all the things that I thought were true were a lie. The rules are meant to be broken. The boundaries that they set up for what's considered a handicap or disability, it's a lie. It's a total lie. So I would tell you, be encouraged, and you're in law school because you're smart. If you have a home or an apartment, there's no difference. Home ownership it's not a big deal. And an apartment is great because you can leave anytime you want to, move anytime you want to. So just don't bound yourself to rules and traditions, because they will let you down every time. So I would say, you're smart, you're brilliant, kick down the walls, you're awesome, you're beautiful, and there's no such thing as a disability. We're here because we're meant to be here. And so I would say be encouraged and just just believe those words that I'm sharing with you.
And if I can jump in here, as Katrina often has done, she's inspired me. I want to say back at you. You are beautiful and brilliant, and it's just amazing to hear your thoughts on these things. Michael, I also want to extend my condolences. I saw in the transcript that you recently suffered a loss. I'm not sure about what that is, but certainly want to be with you in thought and prayer. You also inspired me, Michael, that you did go through this. You did get through law school, which is bad enough, but that you also passed the bar. You've become an attorney 15 years ago, and you're still at it and plugging away. So that's just an amazing, I want to say a thumb of the nose to those that would have held you back, that would have told you the lies that Katrina spoke of. So you definitely have disproved that lie. And that gives me some additional courage to do that. As far as solutions, self-acceptance is a big part of the solution right there. And first you have to kind of understand yourself. And with some of the challenges like depression and anxiety, those diseases, I think especially depression, are the biggest liars out there. They tell you things that aren't real. Things could be going perfectly fine, no real problems in life, and then all of a sudden you feel like you want to just jump off a bridge. And that's your depression speaking to you, saying that everything is hopeless, when reality, and you even know this sometimes, it doesn't match that lie that depression is telling you. So cutting through the lies is key. Knowing yourself is key. And once you can know yourself, then you can bring that into a self-acceptance. And I'm slowly in that process. Process is probably our theme for the day, but I'm in that process, as well as the medical diagnosis process, all of that stuff. But the self-acceptance process tells me that, and my apologies, my light just kind of went dim a little bit, but it tells me that I need to know what I can contribute, and honestly not to expect as much of myself as I did before I realized, how life kind of can be in this community. It can be really, really challenging, perhaps unduly so. And so I've limited my outlook, if you will, to doing what I can before me. I look to manage the opportunities I have in front of me. I look to resolve difficult situations that I, encounter on my own behalf, but mostly on others' behalf in my job. And so I don't want to sound like I'm saying, okay, well, choose a lesser path, because I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is redefine success as to, not expecting yourself to be a hero in a movie script, but expecting that, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. I accept me for who I am. Now, what's the best I can do with this? And if you do those three things, you will find, honestly, that you can do better than most people without any challenges. Because that right there is kind of my recipe for success in my life. And again, I'm still kind of working toward that goal. I'll never, be completely there, because it always is a process. Life is a process itself, let alone some of these other challenges. So I'd be interested into hearing others approach beyond the, who am I? I accept me. What can I do with me? Process that I would follow.
Jim, I just want to say thank you for your comments earlier. I'm really glad to hear that, what I had to say impacted you that way. If I could speak to this real quick, I'll parrot something that one of my therapists said to me a few years ago. She took me back to when I was a child, like my childhood innocence, if you will, and about, and I think we all can remember when we were kids how excited we used to be about little things about like recess or just getting to play with our favorite toy or something like that. And somehow that gets lost in all of us somehow. Like we grow, we start thinking about challenges that we have, responsibilities, but we have to, whether we have a disability or not, I think it's important for everyone to remember something. It could be even something very little, minute, just something that makes you excited, something that you're passionate about. Because I think I've experienced this myself. Like even when I'm in the throes of depression, like if I have found something that really stirs me up, gets me excited, something I'm passionate about, it'll get me through that episode. It'll get me through that, at least through that night, which sometimes is, the difference in the whole thing, really. If we can find whatever that is and always be in pursuit of that, because sometimes it changes. I know it does for me. I think that's something that we could use as a tool to fight these, because it's really it's hard, and I don't think it's never a good thing to depend on others to get us through those bouts, and if you can really find it within yourselves, which can be very hard, but when you're not in those throes of depression, if you identify those little things, I think that helps a ton.
Those are very wise words, Michael. I will tell you that one of the things that depression lies to me about is it lies to me about my passion. I'm passionate about helping people through difficult problems, whether it's in law or anything. It's something that I like to do. It's a challenge to me to say, okay, here's a tough set of circumstances. Let's analyze the situation. Let's see what the best procedure is to go forward, and let's put it into place and to do. So for me, my job kind of is my passion because I love doing this kind of work. I think that people can find that. That's wonderful. But by the same token, the reality is that my depression will actually take my edge off. It will tell me that, oh, this is too tough a problem, or I can't resolve this part of the issue, or whatever else. So I'd be interested in hearing, Michael, actually, if you can chime back in and say, have you ever experienced that kind of a, here's my passion, it'll get me through, and then having something in that inner voice telling you that lie that for me, depression tells me, and how you kind of challenge that and push through?
All the time. It's particularly because, again, I like that weight I was telling you about with my performance in law school. Like, just I'm not good enough. I didn't do well enough in school. I don't know what I'm talking about. I can't help this person. But not even, and not just that too, but just as you're saying, like the lies, like other problems, like getting in the way and spreading and increasing the anxiety, like just thinking that I don't have enough money. I'm not able to handle my bills. Like there's other things that get in the way of that passion that just tell me that I can't. It takes my mind away from what I should be focusing on. And quite honestly, I'm still trying to figure out how to fight that. I've had a situation recently that is where I've had to deal with that, and it was a unfortunate situation in my job, and I'm still trying to find answers, to be perfectly honest with you with that. Like I said before, like I'm just trying to hold on to things and remind myself of what I'm passionate about, and I try to do that every day. Even if it's just some video or some podcast that I listen to, just to remind me, oh, that's why I want to do this stuff. That's why I'm excited about, you know, and to not think so much about other things that quite honestly are either not really that important or not even true, because it's, again, our minds telling us lies.
Well, I'm certainly thinking that, you know, you, if anybody, is going to be able to make it through this, Michael. I'm hearing your approach. It's very thoughtful. I think that your employer ought to realize the value you bring to the table beyond whatever situation it may be, that there's a way around this to everyone's benefit. And that includes you. That does not exclude you. So I hope they see that. I'm certainly keeping you in prayer. And I don't know if Daniel can serve as a resource, but he certainly has my permission to give my information, my contact information to you. If you ever want to talk privately, I'm happy to talk with you and see what we can brainstorm. Sometimes a one-on-one helps. I do that all the time. And in fact, that's one of my passion projects. Again, taking whatever the issue may be, anything. No judgment. Let's just look at it. Let's see how we can get the best out of this. So if I can offer that help, it's yours.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Daniel, kind of taking off for the rest of this, we have another Daniel in the room who wants to ask a question.
Yes, I was about to say, and we have Gary and Elizabeth who have asked allyship questions, what we'll get to in a second, but I did want to go to the other Daniel and let him ask his first, because I think it fits in perfectly here.
Yeah, hello, everybody. So I work with young people. I'm an assistive technology specialist, which obviously is a type of accommodation. And what I'm wondering is what wisdom you would offer your younger selves if you could look back and say something to your younger selves about this whole process. It's more than just what accommodation you need or works or use or whatever, but because I'm working on finding ways to teach this to young people, like high school, end of high school, transition age. So that's my question.
Can I jump in for a moment? One thing that I've heard here amongst what other speakers have said and what I've also said is not only do you need the assistive technology that will help kind of level the playing field, but that also there needs to be a coordinated, I guess, teaching of the communicating about your challenges that you're facing. And I think somebody earlier said about an email. I think that was Deborah, if I remember, she emailed her professors and was quite good at explaining, hey, this is what's going on. But that's something I would like to maybe think would add hugely to the program of assistive technology. Okay, here's the technology that'll help you, overcome whatever obstacle, but also here's how to communicate that with others. Here's how to introduce yourself and that accommodation to the situation that really highlights the value that you bring to the table and that makes those accommodations worth it. Because I think what is in the back of a lot of people's minds is, oh, this person needs this extra help, they need that extra help, and they're not worth the investment. And that's just a sad commentary on just a lot of people that don't understand the intrinsic value that each individual brings and how to develop the best out of them, rather than to say, we don't want to spend that $10 on this assistive technology for this person because that's $10 we don't have anymore. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know if you're asking me to respond to that or not, but that's one of the key things I'm looking for to be able to teach is the self-advocacy that needs to go along with it. Yeah. So that's a really great answer.
And I'll jump. I'd like to add to that too. I was a project. I worked in facilities for the school systems here in Chicago, supportive services, so chief engineer. And I did a lot of observing of for students. I worked in schools that had profound disabilities, and I've worked at one of the elite schools, what they call elite schools for the city of Chicago. But one thing I saw that particularly in the schools where where the troubled youths are, what they call troubled, and they didn't get the technology that the other schools had. They didn't get the new teachers. They didn't get the all the bells and whistles. But what I did see from the teachers that stuck around, I would say, is that what something you said was communicating, was talking to the children, letting them know that, and not only letting them know, but assuring them that there is more than one path to their goal. So even though the tools that you have for them today, just kind of teaching them or giving them the confidence to look for alternative tools. Like there's, and as a child, you just follow your leaders. But then as leaders, we need to do something like maybe my grandparents used to do, and allow children to teach themselves, and be curious and ask the questions be confident about asking questions. I know the school systems kind of, I think they disarm teachers by not allowing them to be teachers and giving them a prescribed curriculum. But I commend those educators that they can sneak in the lessons to be creative and not to feel like they're less because they don't have the same thing or can't, grasp the concepts. So that would be something I would like to pass on. Just be patient, communicate, and our children just need confidence. They're so smart. They have calculators. I didn't have a calculator, so they have these cool tools, and they just need to be confident and be encouraged to be creative, to use all of their tools, and to be creative in creating their own resources, to be what I've noticed here, be your self advocate, be that person, and that would be something I'll pass on to you.
I will also add, and I can say this because, well, I can just say this, there will be a webinar specifically on the topic of self-advocacy at some point in the not too distant future. We haven't got a date yet, but it is going to happen because it's such an important topic. I would also add here, from my vantage point, to go along with everything else that's been so wisely shared, Jim, you mentioned earlier reframing our expectations, and sometimes it is letting go of some of the things we hoped we could do, and sometimes in that process we also realize that what we can yet do actually far exceeds what we thought we were capable of. And so taking a 360 view of what those things look like and what we can yet do, letting go of our fears, is such a powerful thing. I wish I would have known when I was younger. And then also, for those of us with chronic pain, there is immense power in having something that is so vital to our purpose and our passion that we can wake up and do every day, that overrides the pain, because it doesn't make the pain go away, but man, it sure helps us put things in perspective.
Daniel, you said perfectly what it took me, I think, an hour to ramble on about. So, well done, sir.
Thank you. And you've brought so much wisdom, so by all means. I want to turn it over with our last little bit of time to allyship, because I want people to come away not just overwhelmed by the task at hand, but feeling like they are empowered to make a difference within their sphere of influence. So, Gary, I'm going to pick on you first. You put a question in the chat regarding that self-awareness and how it impacts our relationships with allies. So, can you elaborate on that and ask your question?
Sorry, I was muted. You know,
Audio now unmuted.
here's my question for both the panel members. Both of you got to the power of self as a through way to get you to do the things that you're doing. But in the same conversation, you said there was still this vetting of others and, you know, trying to figure out when it is the right time to disclose or not disclose. And I just would like you guys to square the circle, because I do 100% agree with it starts with the individual, right? And having that internal conversation with yourself that says, regardless of what the other cat thinks, I'm just being. No one is normal. This is the whole problem with the whole disability movement, in the racism movement, in the sexism movement, because it's all with this assumption that this thing called normality exists. It's a fallacy. We all have things. So I like the process, that part of the process that says, let me now in my internal voice say, this is who I am. This is how I show up. Some are going to dig it. Others are not. And that's true with every single human walking around this world. Every single one of us. And I think for me, when you approach the world that way, you can toe into your confidence. And when you communicate with confidence, people listen and react. And those that don't, I say keep it moving. Because if you live your life trying to have other people accept you, and however you define that word, you lose.
From Karen Schultz,
So again, my question is, in one half of the conversation, you said, listen, I do get to know who I am, accept who I am. But the other part of it is, if you do in fact accept who you are, why wouldn't you stand on a building and disclose? Why does anybody have to be vetted? Individuals are going to judge you. How are they going to judge you, whether they're family members or not? Is kind of my question. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. I'm going to just jump in briefly, but I think Katrina could probably speak better than I can to that.
Well, you're doing fine, Jim.
There are some realities that everyone deals with, of course, that I believe you're exactly right. And Karen Schultz pointed out, normality is a fallacy is absolutely a brilliant way to look at this. No one is normal because every one of us has something going on.
Correct.
So that should give us not only a little bit of understanding for ourselves, but also for others. But the problem is that most people, and I'm going to say this anyway, it is normal for people to think that there is a normal. So it's a little bit self-reinforcing societal norms that they have certain expectations of everyone, regardless of whatever you're facing. There is the reality that there is a power structure in society that we do have to face, and therefore we have to approach it with a realistic understanding that other people may still expect there to be a normal. And so therefore, there are some vetting strategies that are going to be helpful to say, okay, let me introduce myself to this situation, this person, this relationship that will foster an understanding and will foster a productive and mutually beneficial relationship or project or whatever going forward. So I don't think we can completely dismiss vetting in that respect. I think it's a very helpful strategy and one that I'm just kind of learning myself as I've described them. I've just recently had that kind of a talk with my boss, and I flubbed a little bit, I'm sure, in saying, just because I'm not on my meds doesn't mean I'm crazy, but it does affect my mood. And I kind of had to say, hey, look, you probably can see this. Anybody with eyeballs can see. Anybody with ears can hear. And so I just knew that, this was, something I needed to address. I did it rather on the fly and without necessarily being able to think through and process it and the emotions that were attached to that. That's not how I recommend doing something like that. Fortunately, I knew the person I was speaking to. It was a one-on-one situation. It's somebody I was close with in school. So I knew all of those things, and that told me it was okay to proceed and to say, hey, look, this is the challenge I'm facing right now. It's temporary. This is what I'm doing about it. So that vetting, I think, was necessary because in my job, it's just me and my boss. That's it. So I think he needs to be clued in on some of the challenges that he probably never saw that I was facing in school because I didn't introduce myself. I didn't.
No doubt. But Jim, I would and I agree. All I'm saying is I think vetting is a human strategy. I think it's a strategy of how humans engage, period.
True.
That's and all I'm saying is I'm like Kat, I am also a project manager and a computer engineer and a person that's in his head a lot. And I kind of break things down to 1, 2, 3. What are the repeatable steps that would work, which is what I think the solution conversation is about. All I'm suggesting is, when I did have vision, I still had difficult people. I still had my own identity, whatever I defined that identity to be. And there were going to be some people that were going to resist that image. What I'm saying is I still had to, the vetting process is not something special or new, or at least I wish there would be. And if I could talk to young Gary Horton would be saying, I agree with you, old man, because that's the way I think. When I stopped thinking about trying to put myself into a pretzel about what other people wanted to see in me and just started being me, I found something amazing happened. People started following me, not shunning me, because I looked like I knew where the heck I was going. And a lot of people don't have a clue where they're going. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying the power is in the self-love. The power is in recognizing, even though everyone else doesn't, right? Because it's already hard. We all have our disabilities. That's already hard to navigate, right? But when we do it, when we face it, that this is who we are, I have found, just in my experience, that people tend to follow you because they're in doubt.
I'd like to add on that point that what you have found is the power of self-acceptance can lead to the acceptance from others.
100%, 1000%.
Absolutely true. I want to caution, however, that, and part of the training that I've had in law school is I'm always counter-analyzing things. I want to caution that does not necessarily work all the time. It certainly is the part of the battle. Let me give you an example from pop culture. Sheldon Cooper on The Big Bang Theory.
Yep, great show.
Lovable nerd that he is, absolutely fantastic show. But you can see how Sheldon is who he is, and he's just being who he is, and he's fully self-accepting, but he can't seem to understand why that is so difficult for others to accept him the way he is. I'm kind of like Sheldon Cooper in that respect, in that my winning personality shines through. You can hear the sarcasm in that. And I apparently offend a lot of people just by like breathing. So it happens. And that's a little bit more of my self-awareness that I need. And that's a little bit more of my self-acceptance that I need on that point. And then also to learn how to vet and how to introduce, because I do want an approach to others that not only says, this is me, respect me, but hey, that's you over there. I respect you too. And I respect the possibility of us. Now, how do I get something going forward there for an us?
I love this. I
And
love
I'd like
that.
to help build those bridges that way. So that's where I think the vetting process really can help. But yes, it's not because we feel like we need to validate ourselves through the acceptance of others, but there are societal power structures that exist that we have to deal with. We have
I only laugh, Jim, is that I sit on the board of what I call the Justice League of Disabilities, Pieces of Me. And
All
I will
right.
tell you, in board meetings, I piss off half of the board members every month.
And then you're doing your job.
And 100%, because movement doesn't happen without friction.
Right.
It doesn't happen. A car cannot move without friction. Friction, for us to assume that friction, that our objective is for there not to be friction, is not the answer. Friction is part of it. It's not a bug. It's a feature of human accomplishment. So all I'm saying is when we all show up as ourselves, right? If we all want to be Pollyannic, if we all show up as ourselves, the friction would be embraced. The friction isn't embraced because everyone isn't okay with themselves.
Sure.
So what I'm saying is you can go too far. Sounds like a me and Fred conversation. You can go too far with the overanalyzing of trying to build a bridge that may never be built. This world has been warring since the beginning. There's always people that are going to disagree and disagree violently. Right? That's all I'm saying. So, there's some people that are going to go with you and there's some people that aren't. And if you're trying to bring the people that aren't with you, you're changing yourself to make that happen. Now you're losing yourself. And I just cannot allow myself to lose myself.
That's an excellent boundary. And I'll go ahead and turn it back over, I guess, to Katrina. She has something to add.
Sorry.
Here.
Yeah, and I want to kind of piggyback on that. So for me, and things I like to share is, to your point, self-awareness is also a part of vetting. You have to vet yourself too, right? You have to say, I mentioned earlier, is this a good day? Is this a good moment? Am I having, does this person that you're actually talking to, can they handle me? Because sometimes I can, as a project manager, I speak in ABC 1, 2, 3, and most people can't handle that. That especially coming from a woman, especially in a male-dominated field. And I have to, not just as being a woman, but just being, just doing what we do as project managers, doing it, what you do as lawyers and all your other disciplines, you have to make sure that the person that you're speaking to can handle the truth. And so sometimes you have to vet yourself to say, can I handle the truth? There's been so many days where I can't handle the truth because the truth is overwhelming and you don't want to be thrown off your square and you still want to be that confident person. So you I personally believe you should pick your battles because you live to see another day. And first impressions, that lie, I wrote the term down, the lies the depression tell you, those lies. First impressions are not lasting. I've had, that's the con man. That's what con artists do. They give awesome first impressions. It's that second impression, that second day, the second chance that you get to really vet that person and vet yourself with that person. So again, as I said earlier, there's no rules. And I was, being an ABC 1, 2, 3 type of person, it is challenging to deviate from the rules, but you have to do it. So So some days there's gonna be some bad days, but never, speaking as a veteran, never let them see you sweat, you know.
But Kat, don't you think that's everybody though? Like Jim's boss that he talked to. See, it's almost like the underlying assumption is that Jim's boss doesn't have bad days. Everybody has bad days. Everybody. Now, I would say one of my closest friends lived with chronic pain for the last 8 years of her life. And I sat next to her for a long time. And it is very difficult for me to imagine personally to be in constant pain. I get that. I really do. Empathetically, I get it. It's tough. It's nothing that I would imagine that I would want for myself or anybody that I cared about, right? So, but what I'm saying is at the end of the day, somebody that has absolutely no chronic pain can still be an a-hole on any given day for any number of reasons. That's all I'm saying. We have our things, as do I. And I do have other tools. I don't just scream and yell, but I can't subjugate myself. I just can't do it, because that is the strength and the energy and the power and the passion that I need to navigate life, to navigate it. And if I spend too much time attempting to make people feel better about me, however they might think of it, that may be a sad errand. To your point, you never get it on the first impression. You don't flunk anybody. I mean, I'm 62. I don't flunk anybody on the first impression, but I do flunk people. I do. If they're not a positive force in my mind space, if they are interrupting that, I flunk them. They're gone, because I have to live and I have to find my joy. And from my perspective, that's the human condition. How much are you willing to give up for how much you want? And that's everybody. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, I've spoken enough. Those are just my thoughts. And I would love to have a conversation with you, especially about the Chicago school system.
Anytime.
Well, we are running up to about 10 minutes to the hour, and I'm sure there are questions we haven't gotten to, but I also want to be respectful of the fact that we have, ASL interpreters on the clock, and this is a very physically taxing job for them. So we booked them for 2 hours, and I want to keep it, I want to keep within that boundary. So with that in mind, before I give a couple of closing thoughts, I'm gonna open it up, Jim and Kat. What closing thoughts do you have? What is the 1 or 2 key takeaways you want our audience to come away with tonight?
Kat, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Daniel, for inviting me to this. This was a tough talk for me, but I do push. So I would say, don't give up on yourself. As I stated earlier, you're beautiful and you're perfect. There's no such thing as disability. There's no such things as barriers, and learn to trust and learn whom to trust. So that would be my takeaway.
I think Katrina has probably the key to success there. She's certainly laid it out very clearly. And I would say, of course, because as Gary mentioned, everybody's different, that there are different pathways to success. For me, I have found that sometimes I'm so bullheaded that I think my definition of success is the only way. And then I realize, hey, wait a minute, I can take a step back and I can see certain things that are, challenging, some obstacles, and maybe instead of trying to go through it, I can go around it. So I do that. And so I learn to always rebalance the ship, always keep in mind that it's my power to define my success. That has included the three things that I've mentioned earlier, realizing who I am and what I'm facing, and do that with a clear eye, which is tough to do. Self-inspection, if you will, is tough to do that without bias. Then to accept that person as he or she is, myself, and then to be able to introduce that person to others, because we are in a society that, of course, depends upon relationships. That I also, like Gary, have flunked people for this reason or that reason. And I've got to say, I found that in my life to be a failure of mine, not a failure of theirs. Maybe there was a good cause to flunk this person at that point or another, but there always is the possibility of redemption. So if I want to leave any person that I've ever had conflict with, if I want to leave them with any impression at all, and that is that there's always a way back if they want it. If they don't, I don't spend my time worrying about it. It doesn't impact my self-worth as to whether they want to spend that time doing that or not, but it's there. It's an open door. And that is actually a foundation of my faith. Why I'm a Christian is because of the act of forgiveness. And that's how I would want people to see: forgive themselves, forgive others, push forward.
Wise words from both of you. Jim and Kat, I have to say, first and foremost, thank you for not only showing up in the literal sense, but showing up with such passion, such insight. I ask both of you to not only devote a couple of hours tonight, but devote some time sharing things that I knew were outside of your comfort zone, and you have exceeded any kind of expectations that could have been set. So thank you for being here, being vulnerable. I think making each of us who was able to receive your words a little bit better and a little bit more empowered to do better. So I want to thank you both for that.
Thank you for the opportunity, Daniel.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity as well.
And to those of you who came in from the audience and shared, again, likewise, thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for sharing your questions, your thoughts. They made this conversation what it needed to be. And so I appreciate that. You know, we created this organization, like I said at the beginning, to break stigma, to break boundaries, and to create a different kind of conversation so that we can all move forward. And I would invite each of you to come back each month if you can, or at least catch the recording. Follow us on social, be part of this movement and this conversation, because we are bringing real answers and real solutions to the surface and giving people the tools to make changes in their lives and changes in their surroundings that will unleash potential. You know, obviously we are a 501c3. Your time, your talent, your treasure, anything you have to offer will go toward furthering this cause. You can learn more about that at our website and on our social. We would love to have people be part of this community, whether or not you identify as having a disability. Please reach out to any of us, and let's figure out how to make this a part of your journey in a way that makes sense for you, and to really just keep unleashing human potential. I also want to say, I forgot in the intro earlier, today is Rakaya's 19th birthday. She was kind enough not only to spend it with us, but to go on stage as an intern. So kudos to her for that. My
birthday.
information.
Thank you so much. It's been
My
great.
birthday gift, yeah, is to not sing to you.
Thank you all so much. It's been a great night and very informative, and I'm glad I joined.
Awesome. Yes, happy birthday. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
And again, if you want to know more, if you want to get in touch with any of us on the board or Christy or I as co-founders, our information is easy to find, I believe, on social and on the website. And we would love to have a conversation with you to see how we can collaborate, to see how we can just further the good that is happening. So with that all being said, I'm going to say I wish everyone a good evening. I want to thank the interpreters as well for giving of their time. And with that, I'm going to say good night to all and thank you all again for being here.
Thank you. This is awesome, Dan. Thank you.